Hey Tribe, welcome back to another episode of the Woman and Finance podcast. Today, not only do I have a tax expert and business expert, Thuli is also a friend of mine. But let me introduce you properly, because we might be friends, but this woman is incredible. Thuli Manana, she's a business and tax expert, an experienced management consultant, works with large companies and SMEs.
Not sure who that is, but okay.
Thank you so much, Thuli, for being here.
Oh, thank you, Mapalo, for having me.
So tax is such a complex topic for a lot of people, and I'm even just talking about myself. You know, when I hear SARS, I shake, right? Why do you think that is? Do you think also SARS is doing an enough job or good enough job to educate people that actually you can be partners, not just an institution that we should be scared of?
I think more than anything, if a person doesn't understand something, you immediately fear whatever it is that you don't understand. And as well, I think it's the stigma that's behind who SARS is. In that when everybody hears about SARS, it's either you hear about them repossessing somebody's something or not even understanding in some cases why is SARS there? What do they exist? Why do they exist? What purpose do they serve in the South African economy?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really more about the fear of not understanding
so
tax.
I'm putting myself on the on the right? And for me, my experience with SARS has been eventually a good one because I had to pull in an accountant, right? Because I realized very quickly that, you know what, I don't have the skill set to actually navigate how SARS operates and what are the requirements. So is it something that you actually advise that, you know, if you are a doctor or just an individual working in a company, that you consult with a tax practitioner?
I think yes. But in the event that you cannot afford a tax practitioner, because not every tax practitioner would want to give you advice or render their services for free, that it's important maybe for you to go onto the SARS website, because the SARS website actually is quite comprehensive and easy to understand. They don't really use text, well they do, but like they try to kind of dumb down the language that they used on the site. So
I found it easier to use when I was employed. You know, I would receive my IRP5 and I would go on and be able to populate what I see on my IRP5. But once I started working for myself, it was a movie.
It's a different game.
It's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah.
So I think maybe then let's get into that. That as if you're working for someone, it's quite easy, isn't it? And if you do hit some hiccups, it's okay, go onto their website or call a tax consultant. But now let's talk about if you're self-employed. What are some of the things that people should be looking out for? Like the very first thing. So let's say Mapalo in 2017, 2018, going into business by myself. What should I be looking out for, and what are the things that I should be doing even before I register a company, for example?
So as a self-employed individual, I think the first thing that you actually should consider when you're looking to go into self-employment is, how do I want to operate? Do I want to operate as Mapalo, as in like in terms of whatever product or whatever service that I'm rendering? Or do I want to formalize this and have a formal structure in the form of a company? Or in the form of a company.
Yeah, let's stick to a company.
There are many, but they're quite complex. Yes. But nonetheless, if you're then saying that you want to operate in your personal capacity as Mapalo, as in a sole proprietor or as an individual, then it's important that you firstly understand how much money you're making in terms of, let's say, for instance, you're selling products. So keeping record of what your sales are, and as well as understanding what your expenses are. But not just keeping record from a point of view of or just to write in a book, but also having proper supporting documentation.
So your receipts, basically.
Your receipts, your invoices, and yes.
Okay, all right. And as an individual, is there some sort of record keeping app or somewhere where I can keep my records, because I mean some of the stuff that I did when I started in 2017, the slips got lost, and I remember when I finally brought in an accountant, they were like, oh, can you give us this, can you give us that, and I had none of those things.
Yes. So there are a number of platforms or apps that one can use. So there's Sage, there's QuickBooks, there's also Zero,
yes.
But for instance, if you don't have at that specific point in time financial means to actually pay for those apps, because those apps, they're not for free, then my suggestion is that you literally just use good old Excel to record keep your information, and as well
have a folder somewhere where you put all of your things in there.
Yes, or scan to a repository such as Dropbox or Google Docs. And just classify all your different receipts according to months.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is, unfortunately. Admin is part of business. If you don't bring in somebody to take care of the admin element of your business, then unfortunately it's just something that you're going to have to make time for.
Oof, goodness. All right. So let's say I've decided that I'm going to continue as Mapalo, right? I'm going to either provide a service or some sort of a product. Then I know, yes, I'm keeping, so it's still the same thing. I need to record keep, but then how do I do my RP5 in this instance?
So if you're an individual, my suggestion is always to say that if you've got multiple clients or multiple sources of income, is that you register yourself for provisional tax. So a provisional taxpayer is basically you dividing your tax liability for a financial year into two.
Okay.
So meaning that you will estimate that this is how much I'm going to make, or project that this is how much I'm going to make for the entire financial year, and then pay one half in August and the other half is always due in January, if I'm not mistaken.
But then how do you do that as someone who, perhaps you just started this business, you actually don't know how to project the type of income that you're going to make? How do you do that practically?
Well, it will be a bit difficult, obviously, if you're selling product.
Yes.
But in the event, for instance, that you're a contractor and your contract value is I don't know, you've got a contract with the value of 50,000 Rand.
Yes.
And it's running over a period of 6 months, and you're projecting that just as much, it's almost the same process that you would kind of follow when you're projecting your own income to make sure that you've got enough for your personal expenses.
Yes.
So so it's basically you projecting that this is the contract that I've got right now. This is how long that the contract is going to run. In the last 3 months of this financial year, this is how I'm going to augment that income that I've lost if this contract has expired. And then so that's my suggestion of how you would go about estimating.
Yeah. Goodness, like the thing with me, with personal finance, I get it. With tax stuff, like I said, I think I normally operate from a point of fear, and that's why I had to bring in an accountant who keeps everything up to date. So what are the benefits then for me to operate either as an individual versus registering a company? Are there any benefits? Because sometimes people say, no, it's better to register as a company. It's seen as more professional, that sort of thing. But I've also heard someone who said, you know what, they were actually doing fine when they operated under their own name. That the admin to it wasn't as tedious as it is with a company. What are the benefits of either one?
So if you're operating as an individual or as a sole proprietor, you must understand that you will be taxed using the individual tax rates.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this country, individuals basically get taxed more than companies.
Yeah, and the more tax just
and the higher the tax escalates. Whereas if you register a company, you kind of understand that, okay, there's a flat rate of 28%. That is basically will be the maximum tax that I will pay for the financial year.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously it gets more complicated than that. In terms of are you
a small business?
Are you a micro business?
Yes.
Are you a large business?
Yeah.
Because under a micro business, there's different tax tables which have different percentages, basically, or tax rates rather.
Yeah.
That are applicable. Whereas if you're a big business, it's really just 28%. So I always suggest that you rather operate under a business.
Okay.
And in you operating under a business, you then take advantage of all the incentives that a normal business has at their disposal.
Okay. Which are, for example?
In terms of, like I've already said, that the tax rates are a bit lower than that of an individual.
Yes.
And as well, there's more tax deductions that are allowable.
Can I take you out for lunch right now, and that would be a tax deduction, for example?
Well, no. Well, no. I'm thinking that yes, it would be tax deductible, but obviously then we would have to keep record of the slip and whatever else. Then it would be classified as.
I'm going to ask a very silly question. If I would have face, we're not going to get anyone in trouble here. Because I mean, these are some of the questions that everyone asks themselves when it comes to business. Like, can I go and say, okay, after doing this podcast, I want to discuss more about business, or just a friendly lunch to say thank you for gracing us with your presence here and sharing your knowledge.
Yes.
Then I take you out for lunch. Can I charge it under the business account?
It can be charged under the business account, but it has to be a business related lunch. You cannot.
How would they know that it's a business related lunch or not?
Well, this all goes back to ethics, right? And it all goes back to your conscience.
Yes. Okay.
So obviously there is no way that SARS can determine that, okay, I took you out to Matthias, and if this was for personal purposes or if this was for business. But obviously in certain instances, the invoice that you provided would be interrogated to say that if, for instance, it's just the two of you and you guys blew 3,000 rand and it was at Matthias, then that's suspicious. That's definitely not a business lunch.
But I mean, what if you have like very expensive taste as a potential client?
Matthias, 2,000.
I don't know.
You just had coffee and lunch. I mean,
so it has to make sense.
It has
to make sense at the end of the day.
Yes.
All right. So if I am operating under a company like I am, Women in Finance, and I'm just going to use myself as an example so that it's easier for other people to put themselves in the same situation. Can I buy a phone under a contract, and it's a Women in Finance contract, then I get a business deduction from that?
Yes, you can, but you should also be cognizant of the fact that, for instance, if you bought the phone for 22,000 rand, it's not the full 22,000 rand that would be deductible in that year that the phone was purchased. So for tax purposes, what would be deductible is the wear and tear on the phone, so the depreciation.
So that would sort of apply with the car as well,
with
isn't
the
it?
Car as well.
Okay, it's starting to make sense for me. It's starting to make sense for me. All right. So I am operating as a business. When I reach 1 million, right? SARS says you need to register for VAT.
Yeah.
Why do I have to do that? Because also it's such a tedious process.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to do that 3 years ago, but every 2 months, and things happen also to me.
Yes.
You know, when it comes to that. Just explain to us the idea behind it. Why is it that when you reach 1 million in your business, you need to register for VAT?
So under the VAT Act, there's something that's called voluntary registration and involuntary. So voluntary registration is you deciding that, okay, I don't necessarily make 50,000 rand a month. I haven't yet reached the 1 million rand threshold in terms of income that I've made in a period of a consecutive 12 months.
Yeah.
But I would like to charge VAT and I want to register for VAT.
What would be the benefits for that also?
So in certain instances, for instance, let's say I'm a garage owner, and I've just registered with Shell, and I now also own the convenience store. In that particular instance, it would be a voluntary registration, but you have to register for VAT, mainly because of the type of business that you run. So in certain instances, clients would say that I registered for VAT because the clientele that I'm trying to sign up with are saying to me that I need to be VAT registered in order for me to do business with them.
I see.
So those are some of the different reasons why people would register for VAT.
So the involuntary one, you there's no way out of it.
There's no way out of it. If you have reached the threshold, or you kind of think that you would reach the threshold, so by virtue of, for instance, you have a contract, and the contract states that you're going to be making 600,000 rand a month.
Already that tells you that you're going to be over the threshold in just a couple of months within the 12-month period. Okay. All right. So now I understand the difference between voluntary and involuntary, and why people would choose to register for VAT voluntarily. But just tell me. And I mean, like I said, I'm putting myself out there today. I have, at one point or another, charged that money, because obviously I would say, okay, I opened 2 different accounts, you know, the normal transactional account that my clients pay into. Then I have a separate account where I'll just transfer to say, okay, this is for VAT, so that, there's no mix up, no mishap. But sometimes things happen and life happens, and I'm just truly being genuine here. And I've had instances where I've used that VAT money. And I was wondering, like, why is it that when I get my invoice paid, why can't I just have an account number that belongs to SARS and has my name on it, and I just deposit my VAT money into there so that I don't have trouble with SARS? It's a genuine question, because I know I'm not alone in this, that many other business owners, you can find yourself in that tricky water. But I always try to make sure that I paid eventually.
So what I normally say to my clients is that when an invoice gets paid into your account, it's a mindset thing that you honestly have to condition yourself to understand that VAT is not your money.
I know it's all my money.
Not your money.
I know, but
so the practice that you've actually started of having 2 separate accounts, where you're separating when an invoice gets paid in, that you separate the money and you put it in another account, is actually a very good very good way of ensuring that you separate your money from SARS. What you've got is your money, and as well as money that needs to be paid over to SARS.
Okay, at least I've got one thing right.
Yes. Yes. And then with regards to you being able to just deposit the money into a SARS account, unfortunately, that's not possible, mainly because of how basically VAT is structured, in that when you register as a VAT vendor, it's either you pay on a monthly basis, or you're registered on the bi-monthly period, in that you pay VAT every 2 months.
Which I'm on right now.
Yes. So when you're making payments, it literally has the reference number that is attached to your VAT registration number is directly linked to the period that you're paying for. And again, for administrative purposes, it makes it easier to SARS in the event that they're auditing you, to actually understand, okay, this is income that came, or rather, this is an invoice that was invoiced out. Because remember, again, this is the mistake that people make, in that they will say that I've invoiced this thing, but I haven't got the money.
Yes.
Why must I pay SARS?
Yes. That's also another gripe of mine.
Unfortunately, tax is you pay on the date of invoice. The dates that you've actually invoiced it. It's based on the payment or accrual basis. So money that accrues to you, or money that you're actually paid out, you have to pay it in the period that it actually relates to.
Man, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. For me, I truly feel like there's quite a lot. And on top of that, whether you have a staff of 2 people, 3 people, there's so many other administrative things that have to go on. Payee also, that's another one. And what if you don't have an accountant? You don't have the funds to actually get an accountant. how do you as a normal person actually just navigate this whole entrepreneurship thing? For me, that's my biggest gripe with dealing with all of this administrative stuff around SARS.
Like I said before, that unfortunately, okay, well, I think that if you're going to take the entrepreneurial route, that the onus is on you to actually educate yourself in understanding what are the administrative aspects that I actually need to understand and know within my business. Because even if you get an accountant in who's going to assist you with your taxes, but SARS is going to hold you as the business owner responsible for any returns that are submitted, or any tax liability, or anything basically that is done under your name. So the onus is really on you to understand, educate yourself. We've got Google, we've got websites,
we've got SARS website itself,
we've got even websites such as Taxtim, where you can actually go and put in a question, and an answer will appear on how to deal with whatever matter, whether it be registering for a specific tax type or dealing with a specific tax type. Yeah,
I've actually used Taxtim to just sort of figure out when it comes to pension funds, when I'm calculating people's amounts, to say, okay, actually how much are you going to pay? So actually it's quite a useful resource. Taxtim.co.za, right? Okay, so now let's talk about influencer marketing. You know, there was an article, I think, in News 24 that, you know, mentioned that yes, for a lot of people, they might have like a full-time job where they're working from 8 to 5 o'clock, but on the side, you know, they do influencer marketing, and that income comes into their personal account. Are you liable to pay tax, and will SARS come after you if you don't declare it?
Yes. The right thing to do is for you to actually pay tax on that amount. But unfortunately, Mapalo, for instance, the scenario that you're using as an example, in that you're employed and as well you've got a side hustle. Your employer, when they deduct the tax from your salary, they only have line of sight of what it is that they're paying you. So the tax that will be paid over to SARS is literally based on your salary. Whereas if you've got a side hustle, that is also income, right? That needs to be declared to SARS. But when SARS does an assessment of your income for a specific tax year, they don't just look at and say, oh, okay, you paid tax from your employer, and this tax amount is correct, and okay, you also made 20,000 rand here, and this is the tax. So therefore, they look at the income that you've made holistically for that specific financial year. So that's when you would actually find people having to pay in money to SARS in the event that they have other sources of income that are over and above what they
How would they know, Thuli? I'm genuinely asking you, how would they know that I'm making an extra income outside of my normal 8 to 5 o'clock?
Well, like I say, it all goes back to you educating yourself.
Right. Because either way, you're going to get in trouble later. And how do they find out? Let's say I do have an 8 to 5, and I do my taxes year in, year out, but there's a small income that comes from, you know, campaigns from time to time. How will they know that this money is in my account?
So I'm a firm believer of when a habit starts small, it's easy for you to be able to handle it. Whereas if now this income comes from the side hustle, and it literally just started as 10,000 rand, and now it's grown to 1 million rand, you're still going to continue the same habits that you started off with. So yes, SARS, when they investigate you or they audit you as an individual, majority of the time they will ask requests for your bank statements. They will also find out from other sources that you are working with. For instance, if it is a huge company, it's a Nestle campaign that you're doing, and they're auditing Nestle in that specific for whether it's VAT or whatever else, and Nestle then declares that I paid Mapalo, and this is Mapalo, I paid Mapalo 1 million rand. Then SARS would
so it's all connected.
It is. Then SARS would then
they have foresight of everything.
Absolutely everything. So they would then go into your proof. This is Mapalo. This is Mapalo's ID number, this is the tax number. Okay, let's then look at.
So they cross-reference basically.
They cross-reference.
That is insane. That is insane. Okay, so I think the moral of the story, even if you are doing campaigns on the side and you have a full-time job, do declare it.
Yes, yes. So there's different ways that one can declare it. It's either you actually register yourself as a provisional taxpayer. Provisional taxpayer, then, like I had said, that you put together all the income that you've made for half of the year. That's what you basically declare over to SARS, and you pay what you're projecting to be your tax liability for the year. And as well, when you're doing your income tax return, when you're answering those the questions, there's a section where they would ask you whether have you made additional income from other sources
that have not been mentioned on here before.
Then it'll open a specific section of the return, and that's where you actually populate information that relates to the additional income that is not declared on the return as yet.
Sure. All right. So, and freelancers. So, what are the tax implications of being a freelancer?
So, a freelancer is viewed as an individual and is taxed as an individual. So, like I said previously, is that if you are going to be a freelancer, it's always advisable for you to look at different structures that you can operate under, and what are the pros and cons of doing so. So, for instance, if you're operating as an individual, then it's important then for you to register yourself for provisional tax, so that, I mean, a freelancer, unlike an employee, an employee, the employer withholds the tax and pays the tax over on behalf of the employee. Whereas with a freelancer, when they pay you your 2,000 Rand, they give you 2,000 Rand as it is. They don't necessarily withhold anything back. Whereas if, in certain instances of which most companies should be doing this, if you're a contractor and you're earning 100,000 Rand, most companies should be doing this, withholding 25%.
Yes. I've seen some of that when they send me their onboarding stuff. There's a section when they will say, if you are, you as an individual, we will hold this much unless you show us your company details and so forth.
Yes.
Okay, so there are companies that are doing it.
So they will then withhold 25% and then pay it over to SARS on your behalf. Then
do you get some sort of proof that they have done so? Because sometimes, I mean, can you trust that they will do that?
It's always important that if it is a gig that is short-lived, that you stay in touch with them and then request for them to give you an IRP5 when filing season opens. Because that's really your only source of evidence that they've actually done the submission and paid the money over to
And
SARS.
what if you're getting the runarounds? Let's say it's a company that said, no, we've handled it. We've paid you your portion. We're going to give the rest to SARS. And they're giving you the runaround. What recourse do you have to say? Because, I mean, like you said, the onus is on you, the taxpayer, to make sure that your matters are in order. But this company is giving you the runaround. They say, no, we've paid it. They give you your portion, and they're not forthcoming. What can you do?
The only recourse that actually comes top of mind is normally SARS requests you to go do an affidavit at a police station to actually say that I was working for this specific company.
Oh, and I mean, you can even show that the contract had stipulated that you're going to get paid 100,000, but they paid this much, saying that, okay. Yes. So there's always paper trail.
There's always paper trail.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but okay. All right. So let us talk about, immigration. I think this is a big one, especially now in SA, where, you find a lot of young people, our peers, saying, they're moving overseas either as an adventure for 2 years, 5 years, then they're coming back, or, they're just trying to explore the immigration route. So let's say you get a job in London. What should I still be doing in SA to make sure that I'm tax compliant?
So if you are deciding that you're not, what's the difference between immigration, the E and the I?
The E, I'm going.
I'm going.
Yeah, the E, I'm going. The I, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but so you going
between those two.
Yes, I'm leaving SA, going to another country.
Yes, and I plan on coming back to South Africa. Then the onus is on you to actually ensure that your tax submissions are done on an annual basis.
Yeah.
So if you are earning income from another country, or a source that is based in another country, and you're also residing in that specific country, then you are not paying tax towards South Africa, but you're paying tax towards that specific country that you're residing in. So therefore, obviously under SARS, nothing would show, but it's still the onus is on you to submit. So you go through the frequently asked questions to actually say that you're earning, your source of income is from another country and not from here.
Okay.
So if you are immigrating and you're saying that I'm not coming back to South Africa, then you need to ensure that all your tax returns have been filed, and as well SARS will also request specific documentation to prove that you're not coming back to South Africa, and all your tax matters are in order, of which I actually think it's also a requirement in order to prove to the country that you're going to that everything is in order in the country that you're leaving. Yes. But I had a client who was permanently, has no intentions of coming back to South Africa, lives in London, but has a rental property here in South Africa.
I was going to ask about assets.
She doesn't want to sell.
Yes.
So she couldn't then declare to SARS that I'm not coming back to South Africa. She literally had to continue doing her submissions, declaring the rental income that she's earning here, until such time that she decides to dispose of the asset and make sure that there's no capital gains tax that needs to be paid. Will she then get clearance from SARS to say that
this person has fully immigrated
to another country? So unfortunately, you can't fully immigrate to another country if you still have assets that are held in South Africa.
Now, I'll give an example. Right now, there was a coaching session that I did. This young lady immigrated to London as well, but she still has policies here, because she says, you know what, I know that I'm coming back to SA maybe in the next 5 or 10 years. And one of the things I said, I'm not a tax consultant, I can refer you to Thuli for sure, but I know for sure you still have to communicate with SARS that you might be staying in London now, but you still need to take care of your SARS affairs here.
Yes. So
for example, she has a retirement annuity here, she has life cover here, which she communicated with the insurance company that I'm going there, staying for a couple of years, and they amended it accordingly. So she still has things going on here, and she still wants to buy a property here, that sort of thing.
So with regards to a pension fund and a retirement annuity, remember you only are liable to pay tax on those specific instruments if you decide to withdraw.
Yes.
But in the event that you're saying that I am not of age as yet, where the policy has matured and money is then paid over to me, or I am not looking to withdraw from that specific policy, then there are really no tax implications.
But okay. It's like I know maybe we're going to get a bit technical, but I'm just thinking about someone who's watching. For example, with her, she has a retirement annuity, but she earns an income there. And remember, with the retirement annuity, you would get some sort of an
incentive.
Yes. How does that apply now that you're not, paying tax here?
So you cannot get a rebate if you're not earning an income that is being taxed in South Africa.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, that rebate falls away. It's like you having a tax deduction that is genuine, but there's no income to offset that tax deduction against.
Makes sense.
So so unfortunately, that incentive she forfeits the incentive.
Okay, all right, no, cool. So what are some of the common tax issues you encounter when you're sitting with clients?
Well, it really all depends on whether I'm dealing with the client, an individual or a company.
Yeah.
Majority of the time, if it's an individual, it's really somebody not understanding what is their tax bracket. A person not even understanding where do I look on my payslip to actually see, to compare what has been declared to SARS on my IRP5 actually corresponds with what has been deducted from me for that specific tax year. So it's really just teaching clients to say that, look at your February payslip. At the bottom of your February payslip, there should be year-to-date figures that actually show you your income and as well as the total tax that has been deducted from you for that year, and compare it to what's on e-filing. So it's that, and as well as people not understanding when exactly am I liable to file my tax return, when shouldn't I file, people saying that, or people not understanding that I'm no longer employed, why must I still file my tax return?
Yes, that's another big one, that my company's affairs are in order, but you're still getting an income from your company, so that's an individual thing that you need to file, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's say I'm retrenched and I'm at home, I'm not earning an income, but I'm still liable to tell SARS that I am not working. I have no,
so every single year, regardless of whether you're employed or not, you need to tell SARS something. You need to communicate with SARS, basically. You are in a relationship with SARS.
Yes.
From the minute you start working, from the minute you have a tax number, you have a relationship with them, and you need to keep up to date to say, this is what's happening in my life. That's what I'm gathering.
Yes. So I always say, although people will say that, okay, look, I am not earning an income, and according to SARS laws, they say that if I am, for instance, earning one source of income, and my income is not more than 350,000, I don't have any deductions coming off my salary, then I'm not liable to file. I always encourage people to file anyway.
Rather just
file to make sure that all your returns, SARS knows and understands what's happening with your tax affairs. And as well, it's also for your own peace of mind to ensure that the tax that has been deducted of my salary is actually what I'm liable to have paid over for that respective period.
So that you don't come back and you have a big mess on your taxes, because that's one thing that I never want to go through.
So I had when I was still employed, I remember one of the cleaners coming to me crying, and she basically didn't know that she was liable to file her returns on an annual basis, although she really earned in terms of her monthly salary below the tax bracket, but she had medical aid. She has medical aid, and as well she had pension fund that's coming off her salary. So now SARS was garnishing her on a monthly basis for that liability that was due, mainly because she wasn't filing, and there were penalties and interest that were imposed on her account.
If you take anything else from this podcast, is that whatever that situation, even if you think you're earning below the threshold, just file. And also talk to Thuli if you need any assistance whatsoever. And as you've seen, Tribe, she has a wealth of knowledge. I mean, some of the stuff I ask her, like, they're quite random, and she's like, mapalo. And where can people get a hold of you?
I've got an email address.
Yes, she's a serious business person, guys. She's a serious business person. Email her. Don't pick her brain, pay her.
I'm not quite sure what information should I share. Should I share my email address?
Yes, the email address, please.
What is that Instagram thing?
So also, can you bully her into starting a channel or a podcast where she talks about these things? Because whenever I have a tax issue, and I'm ashamed sometimes, to talk to my tax person and say, because sometimes I feel stupid, right? But with her, I never ever feel stupid. I literally, as you've seen in this recording, there were so many things that I asked myself on,
Yes.
So she's definitely there. Your email address?
Email address is thuli@limit-less.co.za.
We'll leave it below, all right? And your Instagram that you just refuse, bully her into starting one.
It's tax and you.
Tax and you.
So it's tax and the sign and you.
There we go. All right. Thank you so much, Thuli. You are such a wealth of knowledge. And I really appreciate you. And I know that the tribe is going to extract so much value from this.
Thank you, Mapalu.
Alrighty.